Thank you all for joining us. Of course, I am your Commissioner, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, Super District 7, where I proudly represent all 750,000 DeKalb County residents. This evening, I think when I came into office in 2019, one of the first town halls I had was on gentrification, because I pay careful attention to what the community needs. I personally respond to all of my emails. Oh, thanks. I'm glad, Becky Evans, you've joined us, Representative Evans, because you're going to be critical to this conversation, because a lot of what we see happening in housing will need to be addressed on the state level. So thank you for taking the time. Also, Ms. Valerie Morgan, thank you for being present. Gentrification became front and center because many of my senior residents were reaching out saying that all day we're receiving calls from people to purchase our homes. And I wanted to ensure that we educated our senior community so that they understand, even in the midst of gentrification and changes in tax valuations for property values, as a senior, you do not have to lose your home. I will not allow the people of DeKalb to be hoodwinked out of their properties. This evening, we're having this conversation on the housing crisis, because across America, not just DeKalb County, there is an affordable housing crisis that is taking place. To somewhat localize that, at this time, we have an introduction video that is about 5 minutes, actually 5 minutes, 35 seconds to be exact. And at this time, Allison, if we will play the video, I will say that it has a little bit of satire in it from time to time, but if you pay careful attention, the message is extremely important. And it also, we have the words included, so that if it is not as loud as we'd like, you can read what is being said and easily follow along. Thanks, Allison. Because I think he has done a great job of unpackaging many of the issues. There are 2 slides, Allison, that I asked you to develop for me. And if we can we begin with slide 1 first? Because I want to walk back through slowly many of the issues that were raised. Trevor Noah, I follow him because in the midst of all that he does, he's actually quite brilliant in how he presents information. But when we look at what's causing the record high housing prices currently, what we're dealing with here in DeKalb is a lack of inventory. We're dealing with high demand. We're dealing with record low mortgage rates. Also, I like this video because he uncovered the role that Wall Street and private investors are playing in what we're experiencing. In addition to Wall Street, you have private equity firms, you have all cash offers. Many of you see homes that are being owned by LLCs. There's also the issue of the millennials versus the boomers. The millennials now are moving into the marketplace. They have more money. They are deciding to live further out to get more. They're buying fixer-uppers. They're coming into older communities. And technically, oftentimes what you see when we deal with millennials versus the baby boomers is, of course, gentrification. But also, the cost of homes is currently being affected by supply chain, materials, the cost of land. And now, Allison, if we can go to the next slide, because these are the things we're here to unpackage tonight. When we look at the current housing market and where we are, currently, home prices have increased. They are at their highest rate in over 15 years and 23% higher, okay? Secondly, half of all homes sell in 1 week after hitting the market. I see one of my constituents, I see Ms. Sandy Johnson. And Sandy, thank you, because you were one of the first people to reach out to me and say, what are we going to do, Commissioner? Because you couldn't find homes that people could even rent, because all of these homes are being bought up. And most homes now sell within 7 days of hitting the market. We see an increase in rental rates, disproportionate wealth equity. Whether or not we like it, this is very much a polarizing issue between Blacks and whites, brown communities, communities of color, because 80% of the average American's wealth is directly linked to home ownership. When we create environments where we do not have homeowners, that diminishes the average wealth of most Americans. Also, we're dealing with issues of gentrification and the proverbial pad splits here in DeKalb, where we're finding these LLCs, wealth equity partners, and foreign investors come in, buy properties in our home, in single family homes or communities that are zoned R75, and then divide out the bedrooms and advertise them online, 1 bedroom and 1 bath for rent. And they're charging weekly rental rates as well as monthly rates. And I do want you to know, if you know a home that has this issue in your community, it is illegal. All I need is an address and we will address the issue. So at this time, I've taken my first 15 minutes and I'm right on target to talk about the issue. And now for the next hour, we're going to dive into the issue with people who can assist us with this conversation. And Allison, at this time, if we can have our slide of our participants tonight, whom I thank so much for taking the time to come here with me on this, I believe it's Wednesday, or it may be Thursday. My days get away from me. It's Thursday. Okay. Thanks to my daughter for keeping me on the straight and narrow. And I also want to thank Representative Viola Davis for being present. I also see Mr. Wayne Powell from our Belvedere community, Mr. Sean Jenkins. I also see Pastor Mentor as well as Emily Helvey. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to introduce our panel members and then we're going to get right into the conversation. Of course, I'm here and present. You know me as your commissioner. And Allison, we can just move right on beyond me. Okay, first we have Miss Susan Adams, and Susan is the Senior Director of Operations for the Atlanta Neighborhood Development Partnership, Inc. She is a valued partner and I've worked with her for a long time. We just had that conversation before becoming the commissioner. Next this evening, we have with us Mr. John Corcoran, and he is the president of the Housing Development Corporation. But he works very closely here in DeKalb County with the DeKalb Housing Authority. So he's going to give you some startling numbers on the wait list for DeKalb County as it relates to affordable housing. Next this evening, we have on the conversation, Mr. Michael German. He is the current principal for Broadway America, LLC, and former HUD, Georgia Field Office Director of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development under the Barack Obama administration. Next, we have Pastor Harris, and she is a staff pastor of outreach and community development at the Greater Piney Grove Baptist Church. This evening, she will specifically talk about The Grove, which is a new development, and I commend them because these are the type partners we need. That was developed for senior housing, and it houses 70 seniors here in DeKalb County. And thank you for being present, Pastor Harris. Next, we have Ms. Carne Mahone. Carne is the executive director of Morningstar Urban Development, Inc. She provides a whole litany of services to aspiring homeowners and works alongside me as it relates to finding not only affordable housing, but ensuring that we have the credit scores and the resources to create homeowners, because that's always the desired option. We are having too many pad splits and too many purchases outside residential homes. And next we have Mr. Alan Mitchell. He is the Director of Community Development for DeKalb County, Georgia, and he works primarily with, one of his major areas is HUD. And of course, he will talk to those this evening who may be in the real estate business, who may be developers, or who may have an interest in helping us help ourselves by solving the problem about programs that we have here in DeKalb County so that you can obtain the funds you need to help us solve the problem. And I believe last but not least, we have Mr. Fariz Morani from Access Loans and Financing. Fariz is just a wonderful spirit, reached out to me 2 years ago, and he's in my district and said, how can I help you? Because he, I believe it was during the time of the gentrification call. And he is one of the top 10 mortgage brokers in the state of Georgia, and a wonderful resource on what is happening in the marketplace. So at this time, I'm going to go straight into my questions this evening. And I think it would probably be appropriate to start with I'm going to start with you, John, and I'm going to take executive privilege. I'm going to call you by your first name. Feel free to call me by mine. I want you, for everyone on this call, to talk about the current wait list for housing in DeKalb County and the challenges that you face in meeting the needs of people who are calling your office.
So thank you for the introduction, and I am affiliated with the Housing Authority of DeKalb County, and it is a crisis for us for the wait list. Currently, the DeKalb County Housing Authority has roughly 4,700 vouchers that it has to administer, and currently we have just about 45,000 people waiting for those 4,600 vouchers.
And I want to stop you right there. Because if you don't understand what we're facing, I think one of the travesties I've come to realize in government is we are not vocal enough so that people understand the magnitude of the problem that we're dealing with. We have 4,700 vouchers, and we have 45,000 people who are currently waiting for housing. There are few days and weeks that go by that I do not have people that reach out and say, I need help. It is so unfortunate because I realize when you look at the numbers, we are not in a position to meet the demand. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, but I need to make sure that people understand, and there's no equivocation here on what you heard. 4,700 vouchers and 45,000 people. And go ahead.
Unfortunately, the only way that openings come up of those 4,700 vouchers is somebody left the program or they passed away. So we're not talking about a huge turnover. It's not like we're addressing 45 or 4,700 people annually. We're only addressing a small fraction that fall off of out of the program. And it is not uncommon. We have many frustrated people on that wait list that have been waiting 5+ years. And we get calls regularly to do that. And then also to let you know that we do a lot of stuff with prioritization. So our HUD mandate lets us prioritize DeKalb County residents. So of that 45,000, there are people obviously outside DeKalb County that have applied for it, but we give them first preference. So as we go through the list, they're the ones who we contact first. And then also the Housing Authority's gone a step further because we realize that 4,700 is just not going to put a dent in affordable housing in DeKalb County. So under the leadership of Pete Walker, who's our CEO, we've set out on developing properties. So unlike other housing authorities, we've actually developed 15 affordable housing complexes within DeKalb County. It's somewhere over about 2,000 units to try to address this shortfall. And why they're not subsidized like the vouchers are, we are providing at a much more reasonable rental rate. And then from that standpoint, we also have 2 more that are under construction currently, and we have 6 more that are going to be breaking ground in the next 12 months. So we are trying to find ways to address that. And I'll do a quick shout out is that if you happen to be in the Clarkston area or you're a senior and you want to live in Clarkston, we have a fabulous new facility called the Star and Senior Center. It was just built. We have about 15 places left in that residency, and we'd love to have you there. So please feel free to reach out to my office and connect with it, and we'll get you in for an application.
And let me say to you, Mr. Corcoran, that this issue has become so polarizing for me as I sit and I want to help people, that we are going to create a separate portal on my District 7 website of all properties. And you know, the hard part of this is when there is a vacancy, literally within minutes, it's filled. So it's very difficult. So in order, because the one thing that I've come to realize, people expect government to do often what they cannot do for themselves. So they don't understand that technically DeKalb County is not in the business of real estate. In order for us to meet the need, we need partners. And I'm going to now hop down to Pastor Harris from the Grove in Greater Piney Grove. And thank you to Reverend Dr. Flippin for your presence here this evening. And I want you to talk about the Grove and why you, and I want anyone on this call, because I also see, several of our pastors, Pastor Mentor and others. I will be hosting a separate event for all of our clergy and all of our pastors, because I've got to teach you and give you access to resources so that if you have a desire, if you have land, DeKalb County has the ability. We have tools in our toolbox to create public-private partnerships so that we can work alongside you so that you can develop such housing facilities. So talk to us about what you've done, Pastor Harris.
Thank you so much, Commissioner, for the opportunity to share. I am Chianti Harris. I am the staff pastor of outreach for Greater Piney Grove, as well as the ED for its nonprofit affiliate, the Grove CDC. The Grove Gardens of East Lake, which had its grand opened in January 2020, right before the pandemic hit us, was a labor or a vision given to our senior pastor, Dr. Flippin, years ago. I want to say that began, or I want to say the project, it literally took us 20 years to come to fruition. The project pastor understood, being a longstanding organization or a church development in the East Lake community, that we need to ensure that persons have housing, other than housing, have food. So making sure that we were a very viable source of what was needed in the East Lake community. And so, years ago, before I even came aboard, they knew they had to develop the land in which they had, because the church had land and the church still has land. And so want to make sure that we did what we were said to do in the Great Commission, to make sure people had housing. And so developed, there is a nonprofit affiliate, again, the Grove CDC, whose mission is to provide housing amongst other things. And we began the conversation with developers, with programs to see how we can develop housing on our property. Now, what we had was the housing. We didn't have financial piece of it. We had the land. And we were able to go through a number of developers. The thought was at one point assisted living, memory care. There were a number of avenues that we considered, but we were grateful that we were able to connect with Georgia Communities, Inc., develop a partnership of a ground lease, and develop our senior housing. And so we're grateful for the 70 unit senior housing property that we have that is affordable in the East Lake community. We have a number of members that live in the area. And as you mentioned, Commissioner Johnson, get calls every day about somebody wanting to buy their home, persons that are even causing different disturbances to help or to encourage people to move or to leave the East Lake area. We want to make sure that those who help create the culture of East Lake.
I want you to hold that thought.
Okay.
I want you to stop right there, because that's how I initially became involved in this. Because, there are some out there, and I'm so thankful to see so many real estate agents and brokers, and it just warms my heart, because I'm trying to go through this feed, and there are so many of you that are present here. But there are a lot of unscrupulous methods that are being used throughout DeKalb County in some of our most vulnerable and oldest communities against some of our oldest residents who are vulnerable, to encourage them to sell their homes. We have everything from reverse mortgages being used, where in one instance, I sat in the home of an elderly senior who explained to me that they were told, of course, the house needed repairs. There were things that she couldn't afford on a fixed income, that they would take care of these things. In exchange, she would be paid a flat $50,000. Thereafter, would receive $500 monthly. But I want us to do the math. When you're talking to a person that is 78 years old, if you look at the life expectancy, grab your calculator, multiply 500 by 12, then give them a life expectancy of maybe 5 to 10 years. So that means you've literally taken this person's home for around $70,000, knowing full well that the full market value, fair market value of this home is very well $200,000 to $300,000 in the current market. So it's important for us as elected officials to ensure that there is education in the marketplace so that our seniors, don't feel pressure to sell the home over repairs. Not only that, for anyone that's listening, the best thing to do, let me tell you, if people are calling you daily, I want to buy your home. Fair market value, speak with a licensed real estate professional, because chances are they are not offering you the very best deal. So I'm thankful for you exposing this, because when I came over to speak at the ribbon cutting, I sat next to one of your residents. And he literally said to me, independent of this place, I don't know where I would be. He literally couldn't afford home ownership anymore. And when I talked to him, what he didn't understand is if you're a senior in DeKalb County, your economic situation has not changed, but due to gentrification and the rising cost or value of properties that surround you, your taxes should not increase. You need to have a conversation with our tax commissioner, Irvin Johnson, and literally your taxes can be frozen. Now, what happens is when you transfer that home on to someone else, then whatever the new tax valuation is, it will apply to that new owner. But in DeKalb County, we are not in the business of putting our senior community in an adverse position. So if you need guidance on that, call my office, email me, or write me, and you take it on from there. Thank you for saying this, because this time we put this all out there so we fully understand.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And so the development happened again with 70 units. I definitely want to encourage churches. I think Miss Sandy mentioned in the chat that churches, a lot of us have plenty of land and space that we can utilize for housing. Kudos to Clarkston for the tiny homes project. I hope that we see more of those at a price point that people can afford, and not just the affluent ones buying tiny homes. But I want to encourage our churches and places that have land to look at that. Look at the spaces and places that are not in use, and consider building housing, because as we know, we need housing. We need affordable housing, not just for seniors, but we need safety and affordable housing for everyone, because that's something that everyone should have. And so I'm willing to answer any questions, any recommendations. Again, we worked with Georgia Communities. That's who we work with. But I definitely want to encourage you to consider that, those who are ministers, those who have land, please consider using your land for housing, because we know that it's a crisis out there.
Absolutely. And I see Bishop G.T. Lewis. Call me. I am going to literally go through this list of everyone that's on this conversation with a fine-tooth comb, Allison. And I want the name of every pastor here, because it's time that we have a conversation. Now I'm going to flip over to you, Mr. Mitchell, because another major detachment that I find in government in modern day is constituents not understanding the resources that we have, whether it be for those who want to start a small business. But Mr. Mitchell, you particularly work with HUD. So I want to come to you at this moment. And Allison, if you would bring up Mr. Mitchell's slides, because Mr. Mitchell can work with developers who have a desire to do what Reverend Dr. Flippin and Pastor Harris has done, to provide you the resources you need to help us solve this problem. Because this is not going to be a government issue that we can solve. We need you. And at this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Mr. Mitchell, so that we can educate those who may have an interest in helping us solve this problem.
Well, good evening, everyone. And Commissioner, it's always a pleasure to be with you and in your events. I think it's very significant for the CAB to have a trust to help our citizens in areas that are of great need. Before I start going to the slide deck that I have, far be it about 5 slides, I'll answer the questions about resources available. So I'll go very slow because I tend to talk fast. The projects that at the Greater Piney Greater Piney Grove Church are examples throughout the county where we've got a number of entities, for be it places of worship and others, that create the structure to be able to bring on affordable housing. I would tell you candidly, affordable housing has this term called subsidy. I'm not aware recently of any homes and units that are brought on board that are affordable that are not subsidized. And what do I mean by subsidy? It means that you get various things from DCA, Department of Community Affairs, low investment tax credits, et cetera, bonds. There are mechanisms that individuals put in place to be able to afford affordability, and developers are incentivized by getting, I would say, reasonable profits. Some people say unreasonable profits, but I think they're reasonable profits because we work with them very closely and they all have a good heart in terms of their objectives. The Starnes project that John just alluded to is an example where it's affordable housing. We provided an assistance with a project providing a loan. So we have an ability to be able to incentivize developers to get tax credits, but more importantly, DeKalb County can provide loans to developers. We call it gap funding. So what we end up doing is after you get permanent financing, we provide gap funding to solve your source and uses problems. So you have sources problem, but you know your uses because that's the cost to develop the project. And so there are a number of projects we have in our inventory that we lend money to developers on. We have an open application that's available that you can apply on the county website, and we can help you. If you don't know how to apply, we can provide technical assistance to be able to get you to the rigorous process. It's not an easy thing to do in terms of submitting applications. So I always encourage individuals, if you don't have a skill in a certain area, hire someone to be able to help you in the areas that you are not strong in. So if you're good in one area, supplement yourself and complement yourself with other resources that can help you get to where you need to be. So sometimes you need a developer to work with you if you're a place of worship. What we tend not to do is deal directly with a church. You have to form a legal entity, single purpose, I might add, which would be called the CDC, Community Development Corporation, because with that, it gives you great flexibility. We encourage individuals not to do this within the name of the church, but in an entity that's a derivative of the church. So you keep the books from the church separate from the CDC. So we have, on average, given loans up as high as $2+ million. Sometimes they're about $1 million. It varies in terms of each project, but each one is underwritten. We provide support where need be. So I encourage you to call our office to be able to do that. And there's an inventory of a lot of projects. Some currently have turnover. Occasionally they have vacant units for individuals to come at 50% or 60% AMI. There are some that are 80, but most of them are 50 to 60% AMI. You can also take the project-based vouchers, which might be strange terms to you, but basically it's a voucher you might get for that particular unit, and that you can't leave that unit and use the voucher in other places like you would on the Section 8 vouchers that John alluded to. The Section 8 vouchers tend to be portable to homes, apartments, et cetera. They go with the individual, but there are a lot of vouchers that are at particular residents where at that resident, if you're accepted through an application process, you can get a subsidy. But affordability is always linked to subsidy. So Commissioner, I'll stop here before I go to my slide deck. So the other questions about sources of funding. Also, I forgot to mention small businesses. If there's a small business out there on the line, we provide up to $50,000 for small business loans to help individuals for various tasks within your business. There's also an offering of teaching individuals how to be entrepreneurs or to augment skills for those individuals that already have businesses. We use Urban League to do the training. We have ACE, which is a portal where if you want to, you can apply for a business loan, again, from $15,000 to $50,000. And we plan to offer a more rigorous program in the near term with some federal funds we got related to the pandemic to help also nonprofits in addition to for-profits, because most of our loan structures are geared toward for-profits. So that's available by calling our office and our website. You can get access to how you apply and what the application requirements are. So we lend to small businesses, we'll lend to major developers to be able to help you achieve your goals. So Commissioner, I'll pause at that before I go into my slide deck. If your questions in that area.
No, in lieu of time, because this could be a deep, long conversation, I won't hold you. I do want to say to many that are a part of this call, we have to be purpose-driven and strategic when we talk about affordable housing, marketplace housing, workforce housing. Names evolve, but the issue remains the same. And much of what we see, Mr. Mitchell, is many developers aren't interested in the affordable housing. If you look in many areas of DeKalb, sitting there on zoning as people come before us, many of our developers, particularly when you move north, the market can sustain a 3,000 plus rental amount. But, when we have certain communities that are most vulnerable, that is where we have the greatest need for housing that is affordable. And I won't go so far at this point as to talk about, go into numbers, but we have a lot of people now that honestly, if you're on a $60,000 income, you are a part of honestly what is often the working poor. And many are gridlocked because you can't afford to move and sell or purchase for that matter. So if you have a home in DeKalb County, I'm urging you at this moment to keep it. And Mr. Mitchell, I'll let you continue.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. The reference here is to a set of documents that I use Embry to develop, which gives you an overview of what's going on in the housing market, whether it be single family ownership or rental. The chart might be difficult to read, but the net of the change in the rental housing stock from 2006 to 2019, because that's the gross current data that's been released, is that there's a 20% increase in the amount of units in DeKalb County. However, there's a major shift in those units. We lost 50,000 units in the areas that are less than $1,000 per month, but we increased 65,000 units in an area over $1,000 a month. So we lost the low income, low rent structure, and developers got involved with adding in more inventory at the high end. So even though there's an increase overall, there's a major shift. In the metro area, at the top of the chart, there's a fairly significant increase. There's a 40% increase, but there's a similar pattern of having less inventory at the low end and a substantial increase in inventory at the high end. Allison, next chart. This is a chart which talks about permits, which means that you go to the CAB to get a permit. What we've done is be able to compare Fulton County, Gwinnett, of course, Cobb, and Clayton. And here you can see that there is a major increase in housing offered by Fulton County, driven by the city of Atlanta. And you can see that the orange is the multifamily units that brought online with permitting. There's rental complexes, and the single family permits building single family homes is blue. And you see there's a migration by year in terms of the growth of units. And the CAB, the interesting dynamic is that there's a lag in terms of permits, and there's a decrease in the multifamily permits from 2018 going down to 20. So we've had a decrease, whereas the other individuals have had increases. So that's one of the issues we have within the CAB. Developers are not issuing permits for multifamily units, which gets you to those large facilities that have affordable units. However, there is some stagnation in the single family permits. It was up in 2019, but back down in 2020. So that's kind of a dynamic of permitting. This is new construction for DeKalb County that we get from the permitting department. Next chart. Interesting. We've talked about the increase in home sales. So here's a chart which will give you a good perspective in terms of the home sales by area: Clayton, Cobb, DeKalb, Fulton, Gwinnett. Suffice to say, if you focus on the CAB has had an increase in 2019 to 20 of the median price going from about 260 up to 345. And statistically, a medium is not average. Medium is the midpoint between the set of numbers. For those of you, you probably know that. I'm just saying that for some perhaps might not know the medium. And everything in government we use is medium area income, et cetera. That's our medium of being able to determine the dynamics and numbers. The increase in percentages go from, it's about a 32% increase over time. So, but Clayton has gone up to about 36%. And Gwinnett is 35. Clayton's numbers were a lot lower in terms of price. You can see back in 2019, their median price home was only $147,000, but it's now up to 200. So you can see that percentages, it's better to look at the absolute numbers as opposed to percentages in certain cases. But you can see there's an upward trend. The chart to the right is a linear graph showing that we're up. Everything is up. Everything is going up for many reasons. There's a high demand. And when there's a great demand, prices go up. And there was a low demand, prices come down. That's a matter of economics. So you're seeing here from FMLS, which is the source of this data, the currency in terms of what's going on in 2021, which says it's making it more difficult for individuals to be able to acquire the American dream. So just to let you know. Next chart, Allison.
And I have to say to you, you know, and this is where, you know, our representatives, Representative Becky Evans, Representative Viola Davis, and others that have reached out and also expressed their concern. A 32% increase over a 3-year period is absolutely unbelievable. And, you know, as it relates to homes, it's different because, you know, value is in the eye of the beholder, but it's also in the eye of the lender. Because if it doesn't appraise for what you're asking, that used to be a way to say, I will not pay you more than the appraised value. But now what you see are bidding wars that occur. And to make offers more attractive, many people are cashing out of their 401ks and whatever is necessary to make 100% cash offers and close within 10 days. So Mr. Morani, that's something that you know, we're gonna hop to you to talk about next. But I just want people to realize that we've seen a 32% increase in housing in 3 years in DeKalb County. And honestly, we're gonna have to have some legislation as it relates to rental rates, because you do not see an increase in the GDP, in the consumer index that in any way would facilitate what we're seeing out there. We're creating a society of haves and have-nots and making it extremely difficult for working class people to honestly have a part of what we call the American dream. And Mr. Mitchell, I'll turn it over to you to finish up.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. Next chart. This chart is interesting because what it does, and I'll explain it because it's kind of confusing. The DeKalb is delineated there, and if, of course, you're familiar with geography, Gwinnett to the right and Fulton to the left. Okay. This chart tells you the median home price by zip code. The darker the color, the more expensive the home. So if you look at this, the bulk of the highest prices in the area tend to be near Buckhead and Brookhaven, and followed by Dunwoody. And you can see conversely, the lowest pricing of homes tends to be in the south part of the county going east. And you can look at the chart there between 0 up to 200,000, which is the lighter area. And the darker area tends to be 500 to $1 million. So if you want $1 million home, some of you can actually go to Brookhaven and get one. However, if you're looking for something that's more affordable, you'd have to go further south and east to be able to accomplish that. But this gives you a chart in terms of median home sale prices that are actual, that have happened in DeKalb County. There's a drastic departure from having it spread evenly. It's just their pockets. The north is more expensive, and then the south tends to be less expensive, or in other words, more affordable than would be the north. So that gives you a portrayal from the real estate data from AJC's Metro Home Sales Report that recently came out. Next chart, Allison. This chart, I'll go through real quickly. It's the home pricing in Metro Atlanta. It's increased. It's lower than the other parts of the nation. What this is an index going back to the year 2000, and basically saying from that index, have things going up and down. Atlanta tends to be toward the bottom where there's a red, and you can see we're below the other areas like Miami, Washington, Tampa, Phoenix, Boston, Chicago. We're going up, but we're not going up as significant. So it says that relative to other areas, we have an issue, but our issue is not as bad as it would be in other areas in the country. But we're going up. So the index is an index chart from a base of 100 going back to 2000. But as you go up, you can see that we're trending up, but our trending is not as aggressive as other parts of the country, which could be a good thing, considering.
And Mr. Mitchell, my concern is, and thank you to our clerk of Superior Court, Deborah DeBerry, I see you're present this evening, and she had a question, in terms of what measures do we have in place to ensure livable rents and rent control. And Clerk DeBerry, that's where we have to head. Because when you look at the data, and that's what in government, everybody wants to see the numbers, it indicates that we are heading towards that crisis. Now, currently, the state of California, they have great legislation, but they were late to the table because by the time they took action, the rental rates and the cost of properties were so far north that it was important to address the issue, but the issue should have been addressed far before now. So that's why I really want to work with our state legislators and our delegation, because it's time that we address this issue now. And Mr. Mitchell, okay, I'm going to give it back to you to wrap up so we can.
Okay. Yeah, which you're a good straight person, Commissioner. The next chart, Allison, speaks to the rental component. Allison, next. Okay. This chart is the DeKalb County rents. So you might say, what are the rents in the county? So the blue is 2015 and the orange is 2021. So what it tells you here is what we're paying for rent. So there's a chart to the right, which gives you percentages. So Brookhaven back years ago was about 1,300 up to 1,700. The high point is going to be Sandy Springs, Dunwoody, and the perimeter. It was about 1,200 years ago, but now it's up to 1,769. It gives you an indication of increase in rent. So the rents are up. Brookhaven is up 30%. Lindbergh Station is 30%. Decatur North Avenel Estates is up 61%. That's a massive increase. Yeah. So there's an uptick in rents. If you look at Clarkston Stone Mountain, it's up 60%, which says that if you rents are going up, but the job centers are not in these areas, which says that someone has to add a significant amount of transportation costs to get to your job. So there's a major problem in terms of if you pay low rent, you need to travel. Some people that pay high rent tend to stay in those areas where the job centers are. Also, looking at the chart, you can see that the lowest rents on Decatur South, I-20 East, where it was originally $700, but it's up around $1,053. And that's indicated on the chart. So you can see the percentages, but the overall trend is that they're up. These are real numbers from apartmentdata.com that gives you a sense that we have a problem with rents going up. So home prices are up substantially, rental prices are up substantially, and I guarantee the average wage increase is not going at these rates. So we have a problem overall in terms of trying to balance the equation. Next chart. Mm-hmm. I use the term cost spurt, what that means, and it's a very analysis which says that what percent of your income are you paying toward rent? Cost burden is a blue, which says that you're paying 30%. If you're paying more than 50%, it's an orange. And I would say that more than half the people are cost burden, which says that of the income they're getting in, they're paying a disproportionate amount of that income toward housing, which is a problem. And in DeKalb County specifically, I'll give you one number. We went in 2016 to 18. You can see that we went from 48% cost burden of our citizens in DeKalb up to 56.7% of the individuals in DeKalb are cost burden, which means that they pay a substantial more than 50% of their income toward rent on housing costs. Next chart.
Which is honestly outrageous. And with the costs, that we're seeing due to inflation, due to supply chain demands that's been caused by COVID and a lack of workers within the workplace, I fear where we're headed. And that's why, I sit here and this is a serious matter. I keep interrupting, and then I'll let you finish, Mr.
Yeah, I got one more chart now. I'll be at one last one. So, and the next chart is going to be an amplification of what we just said. So nearly all renter households with income less than 35,000 are cost burden. And if you look at this chart, it starts with people that make less than 10,000 to the left, 10,000 to 20,000, 20,000 to 35,000. And you can see that most of them are cost burden when they spend more than 50%. As you get into the plus 35, 50,000, it comes down a bit and it tapers off, obviously, when you get to 75,000 up to 100. That's the trail we're in. So the more money you make, obviously, the less you're paying toward rent. Last point to the right, older individuals and young individuals. The 15 to 24-year individuals are 73% cost burden, which is that a younger individual has more difficulty meeting their rent obligations and that rent's up. And seniors also have a similar problem, but not to the extent that the younger individuals have. So this tells you how many people are cost burden, dedicating more funds to housing alone, which says that it's clearly a problem within the county and the metro area. Next chart, which is the last one. Allison, the next one. And this simply tells you that most seniors throughout the county are cost burden. Any place there's a senior, they tend to be in the posture where they are cost burden and all. And I think there's one last one, and that'll be it. The next one gives you a disparity. The chart to the left tells you basically what the project-based units are, those places where you can get a subsidy for rental, and they're spread throughout the county. This chart, which you can't see in great detail, tells you where the low investment tax credits are, where the Section 8 vouchers are, et cetera. It tells you where locations are. We plotted that. And to the right, we have a sense where all the vouchers are that John spoke to earlier, where the individuals to get the housing trust vouchers from the housing authorities are. You can see that the concentration of those tend to be central and south part of the county. And there are not a lot of places in the north where individuals can use Section 8 vouchers because it's too expensive. So you can see that there's a concentration of affordable of the vouchers being dispersed in those areas south and the county because of the more affordable apartments and places to live there. So that's it. I'll end with those charts. I hope they gave you a great overview of what's going on in DeKalb County. And I'll entertain any questions with regard to the data. Again, Emory's working very closely with the county to be able to develop what's going to be affordable housing study, which we're going to distribute with commissioners initially and then to the public after they review it.
Absolutely. And let me say to everyone here, this data will be on our website. We'll post this. You've done a good job of making the issue known between Mr. Corcoran and you, Mr. Mitchell, explaining what we're up against. You laid the foundation. Now, Mr. Morani, I'm going to come over to you because you're in the business of lending. And I know that you deal with an incredible volume. And talk to us right now about what it looks like for a person who is attempting to purchase a home, whether it be in DeKalb County or any of the other counties that you work within.
So thank you, Commissioner, for having me on board. I'm Fariz. I'm actually the CEO of Access Loans and Financing. I actually hold a mortgage lender license in the state of Georgia and the state of Texas. So I see home buyers all over the state of Georgia and all over the state of Texas. As we all know what the problem is, and the problem is the supply chain. But you know, I'm going to keep it very short, and I'm going to pretty much hit the nail on the solutions of what the problems is. So that's what I think the viewers are looking for. They're looking for solutions to problems that were already existing. We all know that there is a supply chain issue, and how do we overcome that? So I run into, I breathe, eat, live mortgages on a daily basis. This is what I do 24/7. We closed a significant amount of loans on a monthly basis. I run into a lot of first-time home buyers. I guess some of the biggest changes that I've seen this week, starting Monday, is interest rates have significantly gone higher. We've locked loans today between 3.25% and 3.5%. And these same loans were at 2.75 and 2.625 for a 30-year fixed. Fed has raised their rates and to slow down the purchase in the industry, and there will be a rise in the rate 3 more times this year coming up. So if home buyers that are out there thinking that the interest rates are going to go down, they feel like they can wait, the market is going to crash. Expert predictions and what I'm seeing the trend between the next 6 months to 9 months, I don't see a decline at all. So some of the things that home buyers can do to get into the home, the disappointment that I see in a lot of first-time home buyers is they get excited, they get the pre-approval letter, they go out there, they put the offer and they don't win the bid, and they come back to me and say, I'm so disappointed I lost this home for my family. And it kind of, shatter their hopes and dreams because there's a lot of emotional attachment to this home that they're purchasing. So my suggestion is we've started a new streamlined process beginning December 1st. And what we do is we actually fully approve you prior to you going for your home shopping. And what we do is we underwrite the deal, we underwrite the borrower, we underwrite the credit profile, we do all the due diligence ahead of time. So when you're going out to place an offer, you want to minimize or eliminate any contingencies. You want to completely remove the financing contingency to let the seller know that you're fully approved and you don't even need any days to fund this loan, and we'll take you to closing. The average industry time to close a loan is about 23 days, and we've got it down to 16 or 17 days now. We have worked on our appraisal speediness, and what we do is now we return appraisals back within 7 to 9 days. Appraisals were taking much longer due to the shortage of supply of the labor in the market, including the appraisers. So contingencies of financing removal has significantly helped our buyers to get into the homes that they want to get.
And let me say this for those who are listening, and I know our real estate agents understand when we talk about contingencies, used to be when you buy a home, you come in, you say, oh, I need to schedule an inspection, and you had X amount of days. But now what you're dealing with is situations where the market is so competitive, people don't have to give you the opportunity to do an inspection. Either you want the home or you don't. And there's someone who will move quickly to purchase, even if you want to go through what has been a traditional buying process. I also want to say that, the issue that we're dealing with is it's supply. When you say supply chain, there is a lack of supply and a high demand, which creates scarcity, creates demand, creates a higher cost for the real estate that is available. But what we're seeing here, when I was managing newspapers and over at the Atlanta Daily World, I remember an article that said this can't happen by chance. And it was written, I believe, by the New York Times, and it looked at the low property values in South and unincorporated DeKalb. And it particularly struck me because although I worked in Atlanta, I live here. And I looked at the property values. But what you're still seeing, even with what you're experiencing now, there's still an equity shift in terms of where you live. And even with this 30% increase we're seeing, property values in certain areas still are not equitable with a comparable home that may be located in a different area. So, I do want you to talk though about what people can expect, because, now people want no contingencies, cash offers are most attractive. And, I've even had a real estate agent say that to me. And I didn't think that was something you should say, but, they're being flat out honest. If you want to buy something, you better come to the table and you better make it look extremely attractive, because if you don't, someone else will. And I'll defer back to you.
And I work with a lot of agents in DeKalb and Gwinnett and all over Georgia. And I'll tell you, I work very closely with these agents. And what we do is we actually provide them valuation on each properties before they even put the offer. And the valuation report that we provide to our agents pretty much give them and navigate them to place the offer in the value that we feel that the appraisal is going to land at. And, lucky enough, we've been getting the appraisals back to where it needs to be at. A bunch of so the tips for the buyers that are on this call tonight is get your due diligence done ahead so you can remove the financing contingency. Work with Express Appraisal Rush to get it done in 7 days to give an attractive offer. This way you can win the house. And one of the things that I've been noticing, and again, this is a solution for buyers that think there is not enough supply out there. And this is very interesting. So as with the inflation, property tax, HOAs, homeowners insurance, everything is at a rise. We've seen a lot of investors who purchased these homes in 2014, 15, and 16 are feeling the pinch because they feel that their mortgage payment is significantly higher and they're locked in a low rent and they don't want to go into, fixing the house. And so I've seen a lot of investors that are pretty much getting out of this industry and saying, I just want to sell my home. I'm getting the most dollar amount. So the solution for some of the buyers is look for investment homes. When the leases are getting over, these homes are coming available in the market. You'll run into, you can go to, DeKalb, a property tax site and pull up properties that you'll see that the tax bill are going out of town to investors. And that's how you locate these properties in DeKalb that pretty much belong to owners that are not in the state of Georgia, through which you can kind of navigate through these off-market deals. And I've seen a lot of investment homes that pretty much, people are finding out, like this home that I just did the loan off. The neighbor found out that it was an investment home next door, called her friend, connected to the landlord, and they were able to just get it done without even going in the market. So the answer is, the solution to overcome the supply is to target the investment homes if you can. Again, the tips for sellers is, do I sell now or do I wait longer? Because people are regretting who sold in 2021 and saying to me, calling me every day and saying, I lost $30,000 if I would have sold this home in 2022. And the fact is, the next 6 months is going to be continuing to rise. And again, we don't know what things will be after that. So again, I don't think if you're in the market, you need to get disappointed. You just need to strategize correctly. You need to think outside the box. You need to kind of come up with ways to make your offer more tractable. You need to win the bid. You need to work with lender ahead of time. You need to make sure you get everything done. So like when we get a file in, within 24 hours, we are pretty much ready to roll and let the sellers know through which our buyers are all getting into homes. Again, the chances of refinancing, just kind of touch basing on that, it's going to slide away, and it's already sliding away. People that were waiting to get refinancing done that were going to save $300 a month on their mortgage payment now are seeing a savings half of that to $150. They could have got the refinancing done at 2.75%, and today they're getting it done at 3.25%. So you might lose the opportunity to lower your payment if you wait any longer. If you haven't done a refi yet, and if you feel you can save money, you need to reach out to a mortgage guy, let him run the numbers for you, tell him what the new payment would be, and determine if you still see the cost savings on that. At the very end, I'll leave with this note that this market is not going to stay like this forever. But if you feel that you cannot hang any more on not buying a home, do not get disappointed. Think outside the box. Do the things that I've just told you in the tips. The biggest thing I'll tell you that you can win through is remove the financing contingency. Make sure you're fully approved before you put the offer, through which you can put a non-refundable earnest money. And last piece of advice is, I wouldn't suggest anybody to pay over, I would say, significant. I'm seeing people paying 10% over asking price. A home was listed for $500,000, and this buyer paid $550 for it. Right? People are burning their savings into buying these homes. And again, there's always going to be a cap to something. So I would say, think about what's the max count look at the square footage of the home, look at the construction cost, look at the age of the house, do your math, take the numbers, divide it, look at the purchase price, divide it by square footage. Say to yourself, I'm paying $175 a foot. Is that reasonable? Look at the current market of construction costs and kind of make that determination to understand if you're overpaying or underpaying. But like I said, I'm always here to help. And if you need anything, you can always reach out to me.
Okay, and thank you for that. I'm going to move quickly because I can already see we're going to go over time by about 10 minutes or so. But, with what you've said, I want to come first to Mr. German, because we haven't talked to you about some of the things that you're doing, because you fall very much in line with both Pastor Harris as well as Mr. Mitchell. Talk to us about what it is you've seen local government entities do as the former Southeast Regional Director of HUD in order to combat these issues. And as I expressed, I know you are in my district, and retirement was not an option for you because you are such a wealth of knowledge. And I thank you for your concern for community that has led you into the development of communities to help alleviate this problem. So let's talk about those things if we can.
Okay, I want to first really tell Alan what a great presentation he did, because it's all about data, it's the knowledge, the experience, and what he presented. John, in your presentation, I think we need to make sure everybody understand that there were restrictions to public housing with Faircloth, and that actually has gone now. And there's addition, what Faircloth prevented any growth or development beyond what public housing existed in 1999. And so that's been lifted in new regulations. And there's more money I've seen coming from Washington in the bills that the president is sending. So that's going to be helpful for public housing authorities. The other part of it is we're sort of like a quasi group looking at things because we're in the development field, but we also have Reggie Miller, who's my COO. He has probably at least three opportunities that come from speculators and investors. And that's every month people are flying in. So we see what they're doing. But going back to Ecclesiastics, and I have to throw that in there because this says there's nothing new under the sun. And so I go back and I looked at a study that I participated in and went back in 1983. I didn't participate in it, but I lived it. And so I found the cities of Boston, Seattle, Denver, Cincinnati, and San Francisco. And in my career, I ended up being at all of those. And the nexus that brought me there was the issue of ending homelessness. And so I met and worked with the mayors of those. But I remember when I went to Boston, I worked in another position and I went to Roxbury. When I came back to Boston, I went to school in 2000. And Roxbury had changed from a predominantly Black community to a gentrified community. Then Dorchester had changed from a Latino community to a gentrified community. Seattle, when I was on my way there for a job, and then I went back there a couple of years ago, I couldn't afford to be there. In Denver, I worked with the mayor on the issue of homelessness, and the whole issue, it was one of those cities that stopped, and all these neighborhoods were displaced due to evictions, increased rent, or because the house they were renting was sold in between that time frame. So we keep talking about gentrification, but it's become a common pattern. And especially when we start talking about long-term residents who are dealing with evictions. And I know with the Federal Reserve Bank, when I was in those meetings, and I'm using Atlanta, but I'm talking about, it touches us. But it was rated number 9 in evictions. And as we're seeing from the data that Alan was showing, increased rents and displacement from the homes. And so long-term and long-time residents, all of this has an adverse effect on it. And these people who have lived all their lives have given up their homes. And so when we're talking about, the investments and everything, but the reality, we're talking about people and the investment that they put into their homes, what taxes have gone up, they're leaving behind on jobs and family. And who are they losing it to? Young, white, college graduates, majority-wise, and high-income families are moving in. So I'm just laying the, Ecclesiastics is there. So now we look at technology. So we got a boom on gentrification that comes with the influx of tech jobs. I'm just confirming what everybody knows. And those high-paying job opportunities cause wealthier residents to flood into low-income neighborhoods. So we can welcome Microsoft and Google, and we can look at what's impacting South DeKalb, Emory Healthcare, DeKalb Medical, CDC, Agnes Scott. Everything that's happening on that side of town is coming on South DeKalb. And if you look at how the structure, and just pull up a map and look at what happened in Atlanta, where all of the gentrification started in Vine City, and we're right there in the heart of what's happening on the other side of North Side. And then it's going up to Grove Park, it's going up to Collier Heights. Now it's up to 285. Now it's
down Glenwood. You and I've had this conversation.
Exactly.
Now it's on Candler Road. If you take that exit, go into Tony Valley or any other community, first sign of gentrification is a painted brick house with a colorful door. Many of our communities, you will not recognize, and all it takes is a drive. So I'll let you finish it, but you're right. And I just need people to understand what is happening around them, because we're at a very critical state, and I don't want to see our seniors driven out. I don't want to see housing reach a point where we do not have inventory and Wall Street and private investors own our communities. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Mr. German.
So here are a couple of things that I thought about, and how can we still not harm low-income communities and issues that don't need to be unaddressed. And so relieving the effects of gentrifications, you look in some communities, they've done rent control. I don't see that happening with us, but it's what's happening. More buildings, vacancy control. I was really impressed with the data. And I see Susan up there because, we're comrades and the work that they do. But we can't ignore the issue because homelessness is a byproduct of all of this too. So,
yes.
housing.
And Mr. German, I have to take a moment here of executive privilege to say, homelessness and transportation are big issues for us, because what you're finding now is, as the millennials come further out, because the dynamics of the workplace have changed, and I do not believe we will ever go back to where we were. So more and more people are working from home. So for many, the commute does not matter. But we also in DeKalb County have to address the issue of rail and public transportation. So I just see a myriad of issues here. But go right ahead, Mr. German. I'll be quiet again.
No, you're right on target. And I think political will is really the influence of how we're going to do this. And that's one thing I can praise Atlanta for, was political will. They made a commitment and they brought together all the business leaders and everybody to the table. We can do that here and organize property owners. We could look at the faith base. And I think what's happening with the faith base, it's not as easy as it sounds, because there are so many multifamily faith-based properties that are in the HUD sector. Many of them are having challenges. And so getting this thing, everybody together, realizing that we are a single body instead of separate, and how to help each other, especially where you have delinquencies or you have people who are in need of housing, where everybody works together. So I'm saying that let's get together with the faith-based group who are property owners. And Carne, I really I drive by and see your church and I see what you're doing. I know there are other churches that want to do this. They just don't know how. Calling upon the county, calling upon HUD, and putting all the experts and the bankers, putting them all together about creating new housing. The other part, I think, too, is looking at the investment, and this comes from what Alan was saying with the opportunity zones. Who's coming in and are the investors? And the approach to them in advance of what they're doing, as well as what they're doing now, to see what negotiations we can do to make sure that they provide a percentage of the housing for lower income people or people who are low to mod. So those are a couple of things that stay with me. You asked me, what am I doing? I'm closing pretty soon on a property is out of state that's starting with phase 1, 200 single family homes and a combination of 100 townhomes and patio homes. We've got 200 plus acres that we're going to be doing in a metropolitan area. We're going to do a town center, and then we're going to do senior housing there. So we've got phases, 3 phases of this. Hopefully over the time frame, we'll have 900 families that we'll be able to house.
Absolutely. And you do have, and you've made to me a commitment to help me here in DeKalb. So
Yes.
with that, I won't talk about that yet, but you are committed, and I'm going to make you always be an honest man, Mr. German, and that's nothing less than I've ever known you to be. And I'm going to now come over to Miss Adams, and I'm going to end with you, Miss Mahone. Miss Adams, in 2018, I believe it was, is when, I was primarily consulting and working with the newspapers before getting myself into public service, and was a contractor for the Candida Fund. And during that time, I held a series of workshops, and that's when I began to know a lot of people in DeKalb on the government side. But ANDP, the Atlanta Neighborhood Development Project, ultimately was awarded $20 million by the Candida Fund. Those monies have been used to create Home South. I want you to talk to me and those that are a part of this about the Home South program and what it has done, because it's time we also have strategic efforts within DeKalb County to help us help create homeowners. So at this time, share the program and give a little bit of your background and what ANDP does.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, for hosting this. This is such an important conversation, and we are really excited to participate today. And thank you to the other panelists as well. You've provided some very compelling information. First of all, I just want to take it back very briefly to the Trevor Noah video. Homeownership is absolutely the American dream. It has been for decades. And homeownership is critical to building wealth. Commissioner, you pointed out that 92% of the wealth of the typical American family is actually in their home, 92%. But we're facing a significant challenge. We have a homeownership gap between white households and Black households of more than 30% right now. And that's greater than it was in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act was passed. And that is a tragedy for our country and a significant issue that ANDP is working to address through our investment strategies. And you mentioned specifically Home South DeKalb and your critical role in helping us identify funding sources, charitable funding sources for the Home South DeKalb initiative. And I'll give a little bit of background on why Home South DeKalb. We noticed that a lot of philanthropic resources and nonprofit activity were really focused on neighborhoods in the city of Atlanta. And we wanted to see a suburban place-based initiative that focused on a suburban community that was South Metro, south of I-20. And we, in partnership with DeKalb County and Alan and his team, who've always been such incredible partners to ANDP, and with your guidance in terms of identifying funding sources, developed an investment strategy, $20 million, focused on 16 zip codes in South DeKalb. And our goal was to develop 100 either rehabbed or new construction single family homes for sale to low, moderate, and middle income home buyers. And the Trevor Noah video really focused on the critical challenge of supply. It's really all about supply right now. There is just not enough affordable housing stock to meet demand for entry-level affordable home buyers. And so this Home South DeKalb initiative really was designed to address that supply gap. The supply gap is not as critical at the higher end of the market, but at the lower end of the market with the affordable homes, it has been significantly a major challenge. So we announced our Home South DeKalb initiative in 2019. It was a 3-year initiative. We completed the initiative at the end of 2021. We surpassed our goal of 100 homes. We were about at 105, I believe, but I want to give you a little information about our buyers so you can understand the DeKalb families that were served. 75% of our home buyers were households of color. Their average household income was below about $49,000. And about half of our home buyers were also single female-headed households. And our average home sale price was just under $168,000.
And Ms. Adams, I want to pop in just for a moment.
Yeah.
And I do want to give a little bit more background on why DeKalb was chosen. Of course, the housing bubble burst, and was that not 2016, 17, when we saw such a fallout?
And right. And the crisis, the housing crisis of 2008 was significant. And then we've also seen an underwater crisis in many communities in South DeKalb, where homeowners owed more on their mortgage than their home was worth. So first there was a foreclosure crisis, and then it turned to an underwater crisis.
And now let me stop you there, because that's why DeKalb was chosen by Candida, specifically because of how hard hit DeKalb County had been. And thank you to Miss Williams, Miss Linda Williams. That money, that 20 million was given specifically because DeKalb County, Georgia, in the zip codes in which you all carried the program, had been so very hard hit by predatory lending, balloon loans, and unscrupulous lending practices that caused so many people to lose their homes and were displaced. So I want to be very clear about that. What you also see here is a set of systemic issues that have plagued a community. And now here we are yet again. So I do want to be very clear on that. And I will say, because, I sit, as a board, a commissioner, we settled a lawsuit with a major lender for predatory lending, of which you are not allowed to disclose the circumstances, but it literally made me sick to my stomach, because there was no amount of restitution, in my opinion, that could have been given to make people whole who had been taken advantage of, who had lost their homes, all because you chose not to care about the individuals to whom you issued loans. So that is how the $20 million was actually invested into DeKalb County. So that being said, I just want to go on record, because before I was a commissioner, I had good sense. And sometimes, I just have to stop and predicate my statements, because there was nothing that could have prepared me for what I've seen and what I continue to experience. And I'll just let you take it from there.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I wanted to also add, we talked about the lack of affordable housing supply being a critical barrier to expanding homeownership, particularly among families of color. Another critical challenge is down payment assistance. Lack of access to down payment funding for low wealth families has been a critical challenge. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how we have addressed that and will continue to address that. Through the Home South DeKalb initiative, we provided just about $1.4 million in down payment assistance to DeKalb home buyers who were below 80% of area median income. That's about an average of $14,000 per home buyer. And we've been able to do that because ANDP is a member of the Federal Home Loan Bank of Atlanta. And we have access through their affordable homeownership program to about $1 million in down payment assistance annually. And with that program and through other sources, we've been able to make this critical source of down payment assistance funds available to South DeKalb families. So I just wanted to state that as an important issue in closing the homeownership gap as well.
Absolutely. And thank you for what you've done, because through the Home South program, we've been able to make many homeowners. We were also able to restore many homes for individuals who did not have the resources. Because another major issue in DeKalb is we have an aging population who have homes and not the resources to rehab them. So if you're not getting my newsletter, please subscribe, because Mr. Mitchell, I believe it's around February when we do have certain funds that are available for home repairs, and the money goes quickly because, again, the resources are not great enough to meet the needs of the people. So we're doing what we can, but there's so much more needed. And with that, Ms. Mahone, I'm going to come down to you because I want you to close this out for us. And I also want to say that, you know, in addition to your program, I work with also in District 7, Operation Hope. And Operation Hope has been instrumental. We have issued thus far well over $7 million in down payment assistance to first-time home buyers, because it's important that we create home buyers. We need people in communities that live in homes. There was, I think, Gina Mann, one of my constituents, you asked a question concerning what is it we can do to keep our R75, which to be technical is residential communities, from becoming literally investor communities. Now, one thing that I can say sitting on the Board of Commissioners when it comes to zoning, if you bring me a community, we will put in it a requirement that there is a mandatory HOA and we can limit the amount of rental units. That can be done. Those are things now that I believe have become critical. But secondly, you know, when we look at what we can do, you know, the unfortunate thing is we can't control who buys a home on the fair market. But what we can do is if you buy an R75, you're not going to come into our community, into a residential community and operate a pad split or the do drop in hotel where you are renting each and every room to anyone who shows up. That's not what we're going to do, not in our DeKalb. So if you're dealing with an issue of that nature, then if you will contact my office, all I need is a street address. I will get code enforcement out there. We will evaluate, if necessary, issue citations, and we will stop that. So our recourse is working together because you all have to be my eyes and ears, because I honestly will not know independent of you telling me. And Ms. Mahone, I'm going to come back to you, and I'm so sorry to interrupt. And Ms. You are on mute, Ms. Mahone. I don't know how that happened. If you can unmute yourself now, great.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Commissioner Cochran, for this platform and this opportunity. I know we are over time, but please let me have my time. I am the Executive Director of Morningstar Urban Development. We are a HUD-approved housing agency. Our services and our programs are designed to provide a holistic approach to individuals and families, addressing them from their finances, employment, successful tenancy, purchasing and maintaining homeownership. And we do this through education, coaching, and training that will ensure their economic success. Now, we are the ones that get the bulk of just about every situation when it comes to housing that occurs in DeKalb County and other counties that we service as a HUD-approved agency. From the woman that is sleeping in her car with 4 kids, to the extended stay tenants, to the seniors who are only getting SSI, to the ones that are in reverse mortgages that were not educated properly as to why they got into it in the first place, to those that need repairs, especially seniors. And of course, we deal with those homeowners that are in default and the ones that are trying to purchase homes as well. So we get the whole spectrum of every bulk of this. When it relates to dollars, when you talk about $20 million, when you talk about $7 million, unfortunately, that's not a lot of money. Not when you have people that are delinquent. Our office have been overwhelmed with every person that has a housing instability that there is in DeKalb County and others. We are overwhelmed with renters that are creditworthy, but delinquent because of COVID instances and other things that have occurred. High rents, people are being evicted or being leased or not being renewed because of the fact that you have investors that have come in and they are able to make more money on their rental properties now, and they are not renewing leases. Listen, our homeless population is about to increase in ways that you've never seen. If you think it's bad now, you just wait. Home ownership now is becoming or being put on the back burner for a lot of people because of the increasing housing prices. Houses, the same house that I paid $65,000 for in 1992 is going for $280,000 in South DeKalb. This cannot continue. We have people, real estate agents that are online today. Listen, brokers, you all have to get involved in making more people homeowners and not allowing investors to come in because they have cash. We understand that cash is king, but come on, you cannot compete with cash with people that are trying to house 3 children, 4 children, and trying to make a living, and all they want to do is to be able to have safe and affordable housing. We are dealing with this on a level that we've never dealt with. DeKalb County, yes, became the Home South Initiative. All of that was great when DeKalb County was #1 in the nation in foreclosures. All of that was good, but again, $20 million is no money when you've got almost that many people that are being affected in the state of Georgia. Monies need to be brought in across the board. Affordable housing, nobody wants to give it a number. It needs a number. What is the cost is it going to be to have affordable housing built in DeKalb County? What is the number? Is it 200? Is it 300? Is it $400,000? When we're looking at the average sale prices is $300,000 or more, we're not talking about people that are living in Brookhaven. We're not talking about people that are living in North DeKalb County. We're talking about people that are living in Stone Mountain, that are living in Decatur, that are living in Lithonia, that cannot afford to live in a safe and affordable house, or they're on the verge of being evicted. What are we going to do about those clients? What are we going to do about those families? What are we going to do about the ones that are calling my office because they're being evicted because they only have $780 to live off of for the rest of their life? And some of them are not even at a senior age to be able to get into any housing that has a subsidy. And we already saw from what John said, I think it was John, that there's not enough housing available for the people that are on the wait list. And the wait list is not even compared to what the senior wait list is. As soon as the houses are built, they're occupied. When you're talking about 70 housing units in opposed to 700 people that need housing, that is no number that we can compete with and actually tell people how this is going to change. We need to find out what the number is. What is it going to take to get affordable housing built? How are we going to do it? And what can we do to make it happen? And it's not going to happen when you're channeling your funds to people that do not have a stake in DeKalb County. Morningstar Urban Development has been here for 10 years. We are not getting the county support that we need. And I know this is not the platform for it. We need realtors to be more sensitive to the needs of home buyers that are trying to buy in this market. We need them to understand that you cannot continue to look at offers where people are able to pay $50,000 because they have a corporate job over the sales price. This can't continue. We cannot continue to let, and I'm going to call names, Open Door. We cannot continue to let the Mark Spains. We cannot continue to let the OfferPass and Divvy and all these people come in. They're nothing but undercover investors that are coming in and buying up all of the properties and not allowing people that will have a stake in the community, will live there, will buy there, have part or be able to purchase homes in our communities. This cannot continue to happen. We need help. We need help across the board, not because we want our name tied to something big. We need to be able to help the smaller agencies that are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis to help these people stay housed. I'm telling you, the homeless population is increasing day by day by numbers that you cannot imagine. And we are there in the heart of it as housing agencies, getting our hands dirty to try to deal with these people, and we have nowhere to send them. Not only do we need money, we need resources that will be able to channel these people to where they can be able to not be stressed out, quitting jobs because they don't have daycare. This is the real DeKalb County that is going on, especially in South DeKalb. We need help. We need legislation that is going to be put in, laws, code enforcement. We need so many things across the whole spectrum of housing that we have to address. Talking about it for an hour and 30 minutes is not going to be enough. We really need to be able to get in, put our gloves on, and find out what it's going to take to make something happen in DeKalb County with affordable housing. Gentrification is happening, yes. And the only way that gentrification is good, by the way, but it needs to be a way to be able to make people that are going to be a part of those communities have affordable housing as well.
And Ms. Mahone, thank you. I know you, and that's why I knew we needed to bring this to you to just knock the ball home. Because, you know, I thank God for relationships and conversations and just plain out wisdom. Because when I initially met you and we started to talk about your initiative with and all of the programs that you had, the first thing that we held together was an event to help people who were upside down with their mortgage. And of course, this was right after the housing bubble had burst, when many people were, as you explained, underwater because of now properties that the value did not exist. And I can remember walking into that church that Saturday and looking around me and saying, oh my God, what is going on here? As an elected official, and to all of those that are out there that are elected officials, this is a battle cry. You know, I was once told it's easier to start or it's easier to create a monument than a movement. But I refuse to believe that. It's time that we come together, and it's time that the leadership of DeKalb County creates a housing coalition. If necessary, we must provide the resources, working with Mr. Mitchell. He is one of the most intelligent people that I have had the honor and privilege of working with here in DeKalb County. We have resources, but it's time we mobilize the community because we can't solve this problem alone. I need everyone to understand we have 4,600 vouchers out right now. But we have a list of over 45,000 people that are competing for the house. We can't do this independent of creating more housing. We passed a comprehensive plan that said we will create 300 new affordable housing units each year. I want you to think about what I just said to you. Even being at that time the junior most member of the Board of Commissioners, it made no sense. Because I know that every study I saw said we needed 3,000 or more affordable housing units. Now move forward. We're in the middle of this crisis. and you see rent increasing beyond GDP, beyond logic. So I want to commit, and I asked everyone, Representative Davis, I know you're on the call, Representative Evans, all of our real estate agents. We can't stop this conversation, because one of the things that we have a problem with, we walk up to the walls of Jericho, we blow the bugle, it doesn't come down, and we turn around and walk away. We can't do that. We need to come back together. So do expect a follow-up email to everyone that's a part of this, because it's time the walls come down, and it's time we see some things begin to happen here. Because if not, I fear the society and the communities that we're creating, because outside investors are literally coming into DeKalb and they're forcing out our residents. And we are a community, people. This is a community. So this is so much bigger than us. Let me thank all of you who have joined us here this evening for this important and critical conversation. All of my panel members, I work with each one of you. You are valuable to me. I know you all to truly care about the issue. To all of those who joined us on this call, so many of the names that I recognize, because it's a small army of true doers, and many of my doers are here tonight. So you will hear from me a battle cry to our clergy, to our churches, so that we can begin doing the work of the people. Because until we provide for the least of those, we are going to continue to have these critical issues. This problem is far greater than any one of us, but it's going to take us all to solve it. So on behalf of the power vested in me as an elected official in DeKalb County, Georgia, thank you for the opportunity to serve. I love each and every one of you, and feel free to reach out to our office. You will see over the course of the next 30 days the development of a housing portal that will be housed on my website, because it's time we get out critical information. And thank you so much. Please go and enjoy your families and have a wonderful evening.